Hi guys, Miss Hallett here. This week we're going to learn a new graph. This graph is called a line plot. It is a new way to organize and analyze your data. So today what we'll do is we're going to watch a combination of two videos that tell us all about line plots and see examples. Then we will be doing our anchor chart so you can refer back to the anchor chart in case you have any further questions this week. All right, so let's get started with our video.
Organizing and representing data. I was wondering how many states people in my class have visited, so I surveyed the class to find out. Once I gathered my information, I needed to organize it and represent it in some way to figure out what I can learn from the data. I decided to use a line plot to represent the data. Looking at my data, I see that 1 is the fewest number of states visited, and 14 is the most. I put tick marks on the line and labeled them for all the numbers from 1 to 14. These numbers show how many states students visited.
So guys, look at these numbers down here. What does this look like to you? Well, I hope you said it looked like a number line because all this is really is a number line with your lowest piece of data and your highest piece of data.
I put an X on the line plot for each piece of data. Each X stands for one student in my class.
Okay, so I want to clarify this really quick. So if you look at this X right here, this means one student visited 8 states. Okay, so 2 students visited 7 states. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so now we are going to go ahead and go to the next video, which will be a little bit more in depth. Okay, here we go.
Describing and summarizing data. I asked everyone in my class how many states they have visited. I made a line plot of the data and shared it with my class. I asked what they noticed about the data. Gina noticed the lowest and highest values in my data set. She noticed that the data ranged from 1 state to 14 states.
So that will be your range from wherever the lowest piece of data is to the highest, and that is the range, 1 to 14 on our line plot here.
No one in our class has visited less than 1 state, and no one has visited more than 14 states. Kenji noticed where most of the data are concentrated. She noticed that more than half of the class has visited between 1 state and 3 states. Oscar noticed an outlier in this data set. An outlier is a piece of data that is unusual. It is much lower or much higher than the rest of the data. He said one person visited 14 states, and 14 states is many more states than anyone else has visited. Here's what my friends noticed about the data.
So we learned a little bit about line plots. Now we're going to go ahead and make one and label it on our anchor chart. Okay, so what you are going to need is you are going to need your paper here. I have my paper here. And then you are also going to need your ruler. Yes, we have to have a nice straight line. And then you're going to need your pencil. All right, so press pause and go get those items and come right back. Okay, so today I'm going to be using a marker instead of a pencil. So you can definitely see my work. Also, you guys can go back after the fact and color code, make your anchor chart above and beyond. Here we go. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we are going to name our chart. And our chart is called the, can you guess? I'm sure you guys are all telling me, the line plot. Okay, so here is our title of our anchor chart. Now I want to just kind of let you know that the line plot is just another way to organize and analyze data. Okay, and it's also a graph. We call it a graph. Okay, now the first thing that I notice that is going to be the first thing we do every time we do a line plot is we need to find the smallest piece of data or the smallest number. So you're going to find, I'm just going to be using the data that the video used. Okay, find the smallest number. Now on the video, the number was 1. Okay, so I'm just going to put the number 1 here. And then just so you have an idea, and it's not always going to be 1. And then the second thing we did was we found the largest number. Okay, now in the video, that number was 14. And I want you guys to make sure you know that this is the range. Okay, so 1 is the smallest and 14 is the biggest. That is the range. Okay, now I get to use my ruler because I'm going to make a number line that is at least 1 through 14. Can I do 0 through 15? I sure can. But for today's purposes, I'm just going to do 1 to 14. Okay, so I'm going to make a nice straight line. I'm going to try to make it long enough here. Okay. Now remember, boys and girls, you can always pause, catch up, or watch it over again. Now I'm going to make some tick marks. First tick mark I'm going to make is for the number 1. And I'm going to go up by ones. And when you're doing this on graph paper, you want to make sure your tick mark is on the line and then your number is right underneath the tick mark. Okay. We don't want any numbers or lines floating around in between lines because then it's messy and unorganized and somebody might have a hard time reading your data. Or you might have a hard time reading your data. We don't want that. We need to analyze and describe our data nicely. Okay, so here's 13. Ooh, I just made it right, 14. Now I want to go ahead and make sure I know what these numbers mean. Do you remember from the video? These were the number of states visited. Okay, that's my label. Now I'm going to go ahead and use a different color So I know that I'm labeling parts of this graph. Okay, first we need to, though, put our key. What does the X really mean? The X means one student. And like I said in the video, that means one student visited that number of states. Okay, so here we have 4 students. Kind of ran into my student, but that's okay. 4 students here, 4 students were here. 5 students visited 3 states. Okay, 5 students. And we had 2 students that visited 4 states. Only 1 student that visited 5 states. And we had 2 students that visited 7 states and 2 students that visited 8 states. And then we had 1 student way out here that visited 14 states. Okay, now I'm going to do some labeling here. I want to remember, you guys, that this right here, this line, is called a tick mark. Okay, I also want to remember that this 1 right here is the lowest value. I want you to remember that you always start with the lowest value. Then you're going to go up here. Do you remember what this is called? You're probably right. This is the highest value. And this from here to here is the range, just like we set up here. This is the range. Okay, now we want to make sure we know that this here is the label. These are all the things you need to have on a line plot. Now, what can we say about this beautiful line plot? Well, we could say over here that this is the concentrated area. This is where most of my data falls on my line plot. So I'm gonna label that so I can remember that the concentrated area that is where most of the data is shown. Okay. Now I also want to label this guy way out here. No, he's not the outlaw. He's the outlier. Okay, so I'm going to put a little arrow here, and he is the outlier. And what does that mean? That's an unusual piece of data. Okay, so that's what I'm going to say. An unusual piece of data. All right, so I have, what can I say about this line plot here? What can I say about it? Well, I can say that the concentrated area of the students that visited states was 1 through 3. I can also say there's an outlier on my line plot that is 14. Most students visited 1 to 3 states. Okay, there were a few students that visited 4 through 8 states, and there was only 1 student that visited 14 states. Okay, guys, so hopefully you got all this information down. If you didn't, watch it over again so you can have all this information down so you can refer back to it if you need to. All right, guys, I'll see you soon.